What's up, guys? It is March 12th, 2017. I'm going to go ahead and answer the Q&A thread from a couple days ago. Time kind of got away from me, so I wasn't really able to get to the thread right away, but we will get that done now. All right, first one, exogenous GH peaks around 4 hours when done subcutaneously. What would be the optimal time to train during the day when in conjunction with the timing of the GH? So this is going to depend on a couple things. I think it's more so going to come down to when you train. They're asking to time the GH shots on a training day. Well, I think that's also going to depend on when you train, because when you train is normally a little more consistent than anything, because it's schedule related and people have a schedule and then they often train at the same times. And so you would think, let's say someone's training in the afternoon, this might be a situation where I like to see split between morning and pre-workout. Keeps the blood levels a little more stable, and a little less rise in blood sugar in one large bolus. If they're training early in the morning, they probably get away with most of it just in the morning, to be completely honest. And part of it will depend on dose too, and part of it will depend on, like I said, time they train. The one thing that I would just stay away from, probably for most people, is going to just be a large bolus that's away from training on its own. If you train, you're training 10 o'clock in the morning because maybe you work second shift, get up, you train 10 o'clock in the morning. It wouldn't really make a lot of sense to time it 10 IUs before you go to bed, or 8. Large blood sugar increase, you're not going to be super insulin sensitive, most likely, depending on what you did with your food during the day. But timing it around training is safe just from the insulin sensitivity standpoint. And also it's obviously going to help you. You have higher growth hormone levels while you're weight training, while you're breaking down tissue. So that's obviously helpful. And if you're in a fat loss phase, it's going to help free up more fatty acids. So, that's it. Around training just makes sense from multiple standpoints. So around training, or maybe split morning and pre-training if you have a larger dose and you train later in the day. How many times a year should someone compete at most? Okay, so this really, to me, this depends more on not necessarily how many times a year, but how long you go without getting into a caloric surplus and regaining healthy metabolic function and a little bit of body fat. If you're competing in April and then trying to do it again in July and then try to do it again in September, you have these couple month gaps where you're just basically, you're never getting a chance to recover. You're trying to basically keep your body around that same shape and get on stage over and over again. And that to me is an issue. Now, if you want to compete 3 times in a year and you do a show in April and you do another show in May, or 2 more shows in May, it's going to be hard on you regardless, but that's not as big of an issue to me as trying to stretch it out, because after that, you have your prep. Let's say it takes you 20 weeks, you're in shape, you're good to go, you get through with your shows, you get back to caloric surplus, strategically reverse diet, to where, sorry, I lost my mic, to where you're healthy. So that's probably what I would look at more so than how many times, is how long you've been in a caloric deficit and how long it's been since you've had a substantial amount of time back in a caloric surplus to rebalance your body and regain that equilibrium. So next one, combining Proviron and Masteron, or thoughts on which is better for getting the driest glassy look. So they have some of the same properties. It's funny, it's like a cultural thing. If you go to you see like different countries and stuff, and they swear by this or swear by that. It's really, Proviron's not as huge in the United States as it is in, I believe, Canada. They like it a lot more. And then, Masteron more so here. But that's just not super relevant to the question, but just an interesting thought nonetheless. So they can both help with that, but I think that Masteron gives a little bit more bang for the buck just because it has some other properties to it. So if you were picking one or the other, that would probably be it. But they both have similar properties in terms of free testosterone, binding, and all that good stuff. So it could go either way. Had to pick one, you could look into Masteron just because it's got the other beneficial benefits to it. So next one, how heavy will I be able to bench if I bench every day for a month? Kidding. Okay. How about what do you do for warm up or flexibility pre, and what do you do post? So pre-workout, main thing for me is just getting my blood flowing a little bit. Most of my warm up, it will be warming up on the first exercise that I'm doing. So if it's compound lift, I just get some warm up sets in there, acclimate myself to the movement, and I'm pretty much good. If there's certain mobility things that I know I need to do to perform a lift correctly, I will do that. Like a hip mobility or, shoulder mobility or something like that. If I need to do a little bit of that, I will. If I feel it on that day, I'll do it. But I don't want to be overly loose when I train. I don't want to be overly loose before I train. So these super long, elaborate mobility, freaking 30, 45-minute mobility work before you even train is, in my eyes, is making you worse a lot of the time, because if you're overly mobile or overly flexible, I should say, then it's probably going to hinder your performance anyhow. And frankly, just put you at risk of injury because you are just like a rubber band. You want to be more like a rubber band and less like a noodle, so cooked noodle. So for me, I might have a dynamic warm up that is like 3 or 4 things, like some goblet squats. I just kind of move around get my hips loose. Some band over and back flies, a couple little shoulder things. I mean, it's real small. I might do that depending on how I feel. That is about the extent of it. And then I warm up on my first exercise as I go, and I warm up each new muscle group as I train, if I'm training multiple in that day. But bottom line, unless you really just need to be mobile enough to perform the exercises and not go super crazy with mobility work and make yourself worse or prone to injury. Next one, on deloading after a long program, time off or light training. So there's 2 questions. I'll answer that one first. I just prefer lighter training, or just less training to failure. But I'll throw in extra days off too. So say if someone's training 5 days a week, and I might have them train for a deload week, I might only have them train 3 days, like push-pull legs or something, and volume is slightly less, but intensity is definitely less. The biggest thing there, because for most people, deloading is a CNS, it's a nervous system thing, it's not, and the joints and stuff can get beat up, all that stuff gets beat up, and this will help for sure, but it's also a nervous system, recovery as well. So to me, it just makes sense to back off the intensity a fair amount. So that's normally how I would go about it. Select instances, I may have someone just take time off completely for and really, really, really need it, or schedule or something. So, and next question is inability to take time off because we are addicted. Yes, definitely. It's just a psychological thing. It's like, that's another reason I like the setup where I'll just take a few extra days off. So for example, if I do a deload week and I am training 5 days a week, then I will just train 3 days. I'll do Monday, Wednesday, Saturday, something like that. Have a couple full days off in between the training days. Training days are a lot less intense. I'm still training. I'm still getting my blood flowing. I'm still doing something, burning some calories, not being lazy, making myself feel good, yada, yada, yada. But there's a psychological preference there too between not training at all and training lightly. And the light training might also mean a longer deload. You might need to do that for 2 weeks versus someone only doing, taking 1 week off of no training. So keep that in mind. Next one, carb loading for, oops, we lost it. Carb loading for type 2 diabetic. And this is for before a show. Excuse me. Okay, so with this, you definitely want to monitor blood sugar levels. I'm assuming this person's already going to be doing that anyhow. Have a good idea of when you're starting to lose insulin sensitivity. When your blood sugar is getting too high, when your pancreas isn't working very well, or messing with your type 2. Maybe this person's on insulin already. Good possibility. You'll know how high your blood sugar is and how you need to adjust your insulin doses to that. But if your blood sugar is constantly, let's say your blood sugar floats around 110, whatever, after a meal, and you are carb loading, and by the end of the day, your blood sugar is 150, 140 in between meals. It's not coming down. Your chances are you're probably not partitioning those carbs as well as you would like. So keep that in mind. You can do it by testing blood sugar too also, but I think loading should be looked at a little differently as well. If someone is prone to losing insulin sensitivity quick, or they're relying on insulin like that, and we're worried about poor partitioning, I would also be pretty likely to include some kind of fat load too, or a combination load of both, or something along those lines. So fat loading could be a really good in this situation, versus spilling over with carbs. So you just might keep that in mind also, or do a mixed load between the two. Next. All right. Question for you, not for what protocol you give your clients, but cheat meals, days, refeeds, prefer incorporating them, or toughing out the diet for several weeks, months, take full diet breaks. Question, inspired by my nutrition podcast. A nutrition podcast. Well, okay. Man, that's very situational. It's from a mental standpoint, some people are fine just toughing it out, whatever, that's cool. But that doesn't necessarily mean that that's what you should be doing, or you need to do, or anything else. If someone's a really high body fat and they have a date in mind, there's a lot of work to do, and I know that metabolically they're just fine, they have enough calories to work with, I might not do anything. I might not need any refeeds or free meals or anything like that. They're just not beneficial. They know this. They're not worried about it mentally. So they, that's what we do. But then again, it just depends on how you set up the diet. This is such a hard question to answer, because I have people refeed at different frequencies, refeed with different meals, refeed different lengths of time. Is a meal, is it a day, is it 2 meals, is it a 6-hour window, or is it 8-hour window, all that stuff. It's not a perfect science. There's a science to it, but it's also something you just learn as a coach, and something that you have to experiment with and be very intuitive with, and receptive to feedback from the client. The better the feedback, the better you can get at this. But in general, most of people I work with will have some kind of refeed, free meal, something incorporated in their plan in some length of time, rather than just taking a full diet break. I'm not exactly sure what you mean by full diet break, just like stopping the diet, or stopping eating a certain way, or tracking, I'm assuming. Never really do that with anyone. Unless we're talking about eating disorders or some kind of psychological issue that needs addressed, and then that might warrant that. But typically, no, I'm not going to do a full diet break, or like a week of refeeding with somebody. Just keep it a little more sustainable. And then I can, where they're refeeding once a week or something, and I can still do a full diet break in there, because just because you refeed doesn't mean that your metabolism's never going to shut down. It's still going to happen. It still can happen. So, hard question to answer. I'm sorry that doesn't give you a super clear answer on that, but that's about the best I can give you, and without getting into more context. I think that's all my questions. I'm going to check right here on Checking my messages. I thought I had another one, but I can't remember for sure. Maybe not. Oh, yeah. Okay. All right. Somebody asked about, this is the last one. Somebody asked about Ostarine, the SARM, and side effects, because you read online, you know, there's no side effects. It does everything an anabolic does, but there's no side effects and yada, yada, yada. That's BS. I mean, it does have anabolic effects. It is very anabolic. It's low androgenic. It does help with endurance, can help with pumps, help with body composition to an extent. It's not magical. It's definitely more mild side effect wise, but on all the blood work I've seen, almost all of it, I see lipids being affected, mainly lipids, depending on the person, but mainly blood lipids being affected. So it's altering your lipids, and then, you know, it's altering other, not altering blood thickness and blood viscosity a whole lot, but a little bit, but mainly lipids, maybe slightly blood pressure, can affect hormone levels, and there is some shutdown. So you will see, you know, it is going to lower your test levels a little bit, and it is going to lower your, you know, it is going to lower your, I should say your natural hormone production, LH, FSH. Sorry, I'm totally blanking out here. Need some food, apparently. So I think that is it for today, guys. There's some good questions. I like the variety. We're at 17 minutes, so I'll cut myself off. And next time, love to see some more questions. Thank you guys again. We'll talk to you next time.